All right, so here's a look at square number 6, and this is for our Tunisian sampler stitch throw. I always keep forgetting, and I look at this thing like right before I film too, and I forget what I call it. All right, so this is stitch number 6. I'm going to show it to you in just kind of different angles because this one pops up a little bit. So you've got this little ridge here, but this is the front, and here's the back. So there is some spacing. It's almost like a net stitch. So there's kind of some spacing between the stitching. But it's a very nice light stitch. It stretches a lot in this direction, but not very much in this one. Just in case you want to use it for any other project. But here's the stitch. I haven't blocked it yet, so yes, it's still curled. I'm kind of lazy, so I probably won't block it until I have to actually use it. But one thing you're going to notice is that it's going to be really, really tall once we finish, because it's going to be 26 rows. So it's going to be pretty tall. And it's going to look a lot narrower. So yes, you will have to block it to give it all 8 inches across, and so this shrinks down to the 8 inches. But we'll talk more about that later. Once we actually start putting the blanket together, we'll talk about blocking the rest of the squares and all of that fun stuff. But let's begin here. Okay, so for this stitch, you are going to need to chain 30 stitches. So if you're making this 8x8 square, it's 30 stitches. If you're just going to use it for any other project, you just need to chain in any even number. Alright, so we begin with our chain. I've already showed you how to do just the basic slip knot and then the chain, so I'm just going to make a chain of about 12 stitches. I was going to start skipping showing you how to do the foundation row, but I don't know how many folks are actually watching the whole series for making all 30 sampler squares, so I'm just going to show you really quickly. Alright, so we're going to skip this first chain. We're going to go into the second one, and to cast on a foundation row, all you do is insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Leave this loop on your hook. You're going to repeat this in every stitch of the chain. So you just insert the hook into the stitch, yarn over, and pull up. And that's it. When you are finished, you should have the same number of loops on your hook as the number of stitches you chained. So if you're making this square and you chained 30 stitches, you should end up with 30 loops on your hook. I only made a small sample of 12, so I should have 12 loops on my hook. Alright, the return pass is just a regular return pass throughout the entire sample. So for the for the regular return pass, you're going to yarn over and pull through 1 loop on your hook. Now for the rest of the row, you are going to yarn over and pull through 2. And then yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over and pull through 2. So this is 1 right here, and then 2. For any of you that are new to Tunisian crochet, we'll do that one more time. So it's yarn over, and you're going to pull through 1 loop, and then the second loop. All right. Once you have completed your foundation row, it should look a little like this. So for this stitch, you're going to be using a Tunisian simple stitch, but you're going to use both legs. So we're always going to skip the first vertical stitch. We already have it on our hook. Moving on to that second vertical stitch, if you've never seen this before, this is the vertical stitch. It's made up of 2 legs, 2 loops, 2 threads, whatever you want to call it. So here's the back leg, here's the front leg. For a Tunisian simple stitch, you typically only grab the top leg like this and then yarn over and pull up a loop. We are going to use both legs. So insert your hook behind both legs of the vertical stitch. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull up a loop. You're going to skip the next vertical stitch, but you still have to have the same number of loops on your hook. So what you're going to do is you're just going to yarn over, skip the vertical stitch, and go into the next one. And you're going to Tunisian simple stitch using both legs. So there are the 2 legs of the stitch. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull up a loop. Yarn over, leave that on your hook, skip the next vertical stitch, Tunisian simple stitch in the one after that using both legs. So yarn over, skip, Tunisian simple stitch using both legs, yarn over, skip, Tunisian simple stitch using both legs. At the end of the row, you're going to be left with 1 vertical stitch like this, and then the final stitch of the row. You're going to yarn over, skip this vertical stitch, and cast on into the final stitch of the row. So I just grab the 2 little side legs like that, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And then you complete a regular return pass. So that's yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2 until you are left with just 1 loop on your hook. So that's what your stitch is going to look like. So from here on out, it's just a repetition of row 1. I'll show you what this looks like now that we have row 1 set up. and it's going to be a little like this. So again, you skip that first vertical stitch, you go into the second one, and you're going to insert your hook behind both legs of the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Now the second, or I guess this would be the third, so this is the third vertical stitch of the row, is going to look like this. It's going to be open. You're going to yarn over and skip this stitch, so the open stitch. Yarn over, skip the open stitch, and the next vertical stitch over, it's going to look like this. So you're going to have the front leg of the next vertical stitch. So this is what, vertical stitch number 3. So here's the front leg. You're going to insert your hook above it, so push that down. Go into vertical stitch number 4, and this one has both legs. So I don't know if you can see that here. So it's a full vertical stitch that is close together. You're going to insert your hook behind both of the legs of vertical stitch number 4, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Here's the open stitch, yarn over, skip it, go into the next one. So here's the full vertical stitch. So here's that front leg. We're going to go over it, go behind both legs of the vertical stitch like this, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So you yarn over, skip the open stitch, and then Tunisian simple stitch using both legs. And that's it. So you're going to repeat this row, which is, it's just a repetition of row 1, only it looks a little bit different now that you have that open stitching. You're going to do a total of 26 rows. Now remember that for this blanket pattern, for all of the squares, the foundation row does not count into your row count. So your row count begins at row 1. So from row 1 to row 26, you're going to repeat this same row over and over. It's going to look like this. And then for row 27 is when you're going to do your the bind off. So for the bind off, you're going to Tunisian simple stitch, and this is going to be a regular Tunisian simple stitch in all of the stitches of the row. So beginning on this second vertical stitch, you're going to insert your hook behind the front leg of the stitch, so just the one, yarn over, pull up a loop, and you're going to close this as a slip stitch. So once you have both loops on your hook, you're going to pull this top loop through the bottom loop to slip stitch. For this one that's open, remember that this is the front leg of the stitch. The back one is right over here. So insert your hook behind the front leg of the open vertical stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then you're going to slip stitch. So pull this top loop through the bottom loop and go to the next one. So Tunisian simple stitch, slip stitch, Tunisian simple stitch, slip stitch. And you just continue until you complete the row. So just remember not to skip the front leg of these open stitches. Since we haven't been working on them for, if you would have done all 26 rows, just don't forget to stitch into that one. Once you get to the end, you're going to be left with this open stitch and then the final stitch of the row. So Tunisian simple stitch into the open stitch and cast on into the final stitch of the row. Oh, just don't drop your stitching. Okay, and then you're going to slip stitch and you're going to end in a chain 1. And like I've told you in other videos, that just makes a small knot right here at the bottom. You're going to cut your yarn and you're ready to go. So now if you look at your bind off, it creates a very similar edge on the top than what you have here at the bottom. And I'll show you here on the sample in just a minute. But that's how you would close that off. You're going to have your 2 tail ends. Remember to weave these in. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it's going to look very rectangular. So once you finish, it's actually going to be a bit more like that. You will have to block this square. So I just haven't done it yet. I'm kind of lazy, so I probably will do it right before I actually stitch the blanket together. But to block it, I show you how to do this in the first video, but a quick overview. Wet your little block. You can wash it with like a soft detergent if you want to, but make sure it's nice and wet. And then you're going to lay it on top of a towel and pull it out so that it reaches all 8 inches. Because right now, once you've completed this, it's going to be about 7 inches, and it's going to be a lot taller. It's going to be something like 10 or 11 inches in height. So when you block it, make sure it's nice and damp. You're going to pull this so it's all 8 inches across, and that's going to give you an 8 by 8 square. So you're going to pull this out, give it the shape that you want, pin it down if you need to, because this is going to curl, so you may have to pin this down to keep it flat, and then just let it dry overnight, and you'll have your nice 8 by 8 square. But that's it. So here's square number 6 for our Tunisian sampler afghan, or throw, or whatever we're calling it. Find all the patterns and more on the website, and that's modebespoke.com. All of the links are available in the description box below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to see more of my work, you can always follow me on Instagram. And don't forget that the pattern book is available on Amazon. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all again in, well, next week for the next tutorial. Bye!